Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back with our next panel discussion on the next resolution for the expanding digital payments for merchants. Let me first introduce you to our moderator, Mr. Nityananda Sharma. He's the co-founder and president from Simpl. For the panelists, we have Mr. John Choudhury. He's the head payment acceptances and strategic partnership from Flipkart. Mr. Sumit Agarwal, vice president from MakemyTrip. Mr. Mannoj Varma, head of products from Lyra, India. I would request all the delegates to keep posting their questions in the chat box, and the panel will address selected questions at the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Sharma.
Thank you, Shivani. And everyone, welcome to the panel. I think it'll be a very interesting panel. We were just discussing before we went live, how payments is, while it's such a backbone of commerce and really in structure, but it is also a household term just because what an emphasis we have on payments in the country. Today's topic is further expanding digital payments for merchants in India. And it's a fascinating question because if you look at India as a country, on one hand, we have a country where 70% of e-commerce is still done with cash on delivery, so non-digital payments. And almost 80% of all commerce, even in the stores, offline, is still done with cash. So that's on one end. On the other side, we are a country where consumer retail is very quickly moving to the mobile platform. People are buying online and people are buying on the mobile. We also have a country where pretty much everybody in the country has a bank account. Right? So almost 900 million people have a bank account. Everybody has access to a debit card. We obviously have a great infrastructure called UPI, which is both safe, secure, and easy to use to make payments, both online and offline. Yet most people still use cash, right? And that is interesting because we all know this gap will be filled at some point, sooner than later. And today we have in panel all the right people who are the creator of that the technology, the user experience, such that consumers start using digital payments online and offline. And with that, let me quickly bring in our panelists today. First is Mr. John Choudhury. John is a director of payments and acceptance at Flipkart and eCart and runs strategic partnerships there. Welcome, John. Then we have Mannoj Varma. Mannoj is a head of product development at Lyra Networks. What Lyra does is it enables the last mile, especially offline, of payment connectivity, which is very fascinating because that's where a lot of magic is happening, a lot of volumes are, etc. Before that, Mannoj used to was in the early stages of development of NPCI, which is obviously playing a very important role in the development of payments in India. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Sumit Agarwal, who heads payments and trip money unit for MakemyTrip group. So, as you can see, we have an interesting panel where we have representatives of the two of the largest e-commerce platforms in the country. Both MakemyTrip and Flipkart have been around for as long as internet and e-commerce have been around in India, and they've not. And then we have Mannoj, who has first spent time in NPCI, building the backbones that we call UPI now, and now working on getting the Bharat, the so-called Bharat, and so many offline retailers to online payments. My name is Nitya Sharma. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Simpl. Simpl is a platform that enables buy now, pay later for any online retailer in the country. And with that, let's just get started. And my first question is to John. John, if you don't mind spending 5 minutes, would love to get a sense from you. Being at Flipkart Group, we've clearly seen so much development in the infrastructure in India, NPCI, UPI, wallets, etc. So many things are happening. What have you seen in your seat and the work that you guys have done at Flipkart to enable online payments so that more consumers are using online payments? If you can give us a sense of your journey and how the stuff that you have worked on over the last 3 to 5 years.
Sure. Thanks, Nitya. Hello, everyone. Good to be here on this platform. As Nitya said, that payments, it's definitely the backbone, and each and every person in the house knows about it. Ultimately, you pay, and then you realize your dreams in terms of what you buy on a daily basis. So yes, it has been a pretty interesting journey. The last 5 years has been very, very interesting in terms of payments. And at Flipkart, we just want to ensure payments are frictionless, payments are faster, as well at the same time it has to be safe because the customer trust has to be built up. So we believe that no, we want to enable more and more payment options for our consumers. Ensure that no, we have the right affordability levers on our platform. Ensure that we develop the trust amongst our consumers that yes, digital payment is safe, and we will be able to do it smoothly without any hitch. So typically that's what we at Flipkart do day in day out. We have helped the ecosystem also develop a few initiatives. Something would be like the Visa Quick Checkout, which is a frictionless payments for transactions on 2000. We did it together. It was not just a plug and play solution where they come and we just integrate in our system. They know payments better, and we know our consumers better and how. So we said that no, let's get together and and can we should build something which both of us know it, but it cannot just be individual effort to just create something and just plug and play, because ultimately the net outcome may not be the right thing which our consumers want, because we know our app very well, we know how we know technology well, and they know payments. So we actually sat together, built it together, and now the entire world is enjoying this particular feature. So we keep on, we just try to innovate on a daily basis, basis the needs of our consumer. And yes, but we understand that payment has a long gestation period. We are in talks with most of the leading payment aggregators as well as the networks to ensure that how can we help co-create newer products which are again frictionless, faster, and safer at the same time. Thank you, Nitya.
Thanks, John. Manoj, what are you seeing? So obviously, John gave us a very interesting perspective on what they see as a very large internet platform in the country, vis-a-vis obviously the enablement of so many products and options, and of course how the consumer behavior is happening. Of course, what happens in the offline world is very different from online, and the problem statement is also different. Can you give us a sense of the last 5 years of the development you've seen, and how the infrastructure is changing, options are changing, and then more importantly, consumer, what is the change in consumer behavior that you may have observed from your vantage point? Manoj, you are on mute.
Yeah, yeah. So, so I will tell you last 5 years, maybe we can talk about, before Demon. So before Demon, it was more about POS and card. There were only two subjects, related to digital payments. Only after, Demon, we could see the emergence of new payment technologies, and apart, which was more, hardware, without hardware, low cost, and more expansion, and people wanted to, scale. So, so things have changed after Demon. And new options have come up: wallet, QR, BQR, a lot of things, and it is growing faster. Before Demon, so Lyra is basically powering the point of sale machines where we do the connectivity solution. So it was only 10 lakh devices were there. So after Demon, it is 50 lakh devices, and it is growing. So a lot of investment is there on the offline space. After this pandemic, so after the pandemic, again there is on the online space now. Now we see the volume on the online thing that has done. And new options like QR. My small merchants. I will give you one small So I was visiting a TFT where I just purchased something and I just wanted to do one 50,000 transaction. So this guy was not having a point of sale machine. I said I can pay you by check. says, boss, check will again take some time, and if you do NEFT again, you have to register the beneficiary, etc., etc. So he said, boss, you do a phone, take my number, and just do immediate phone pay. So tier 3 city, this merchant is a small merchant, but he's ready, he's enabled, and he's aware. So this is what we have seen, after demon, after this pandemic, this awareness, and people have started adopting it. So this is the good news for all of us. And so from the Lyra standpoint, we are also trying to build, more infra. So our focus is building more infra. We are known for, creating high scalable infrastructure, and and second, what we see is the connectivity. So Lyra, we explain ourselves, connect and collect. First connect and then you can collect. So connectivity infra we are trying to create, and we're trying to work on that area. Yeah, Nitya.
Got it. Yeah, that fascinating perspective of the tier 3 and tier 4 cities. Coming to you, Sumit. The thing with most e-commerce and offline commerce is that even if a customer does not want to use digital payments, or whether there is an awareness issue or safety issue or whatever it is, they can use cash, right? Cash on delivery or cash in the store. The thing with travel, Make My Trip, is that there's no cash option, right? And therefore, you have to not only enable the option, but also build every single user experience. Thing that you need to build trust and convenience for the consumer. Can you give us, from your perspective, obviously, Make My Trip is, I think probably started in 2007 or 5, something like that, right? So it's been 15 years now. Can you just give us a glimpse of the journey there, and especially the last 5 years? What are the innovations that you guys have done on your end, and what are you working on right now?
Troy, thank you so much, Nitya, and thanks, Digital Money, for having me here. See, let's talk about not only Make My Trip and GoIbigo as a group and what we have done, right? But even if we have to look at a payment holistically, right? What are the couple of watershed events which happened in payment, right? I think the very first one, you mentioned that maybe we started 2007 and all. At that point in time, the trust in the payment system was very low, right? And what RBI did, much to the dislike of maybe merchants and consumers, was to mandate 2FA, right? It was India was among one of the first countries to have done it. And over the years, we have realized that what it is of that, and today the trust that the customer has on the digital payment system is like paramount, right? I think that was the first watershed event. It also led to the opening up of, like we were never able to collect cash, and credit card was the only option to make payment. But this one event led to the opening of debit card and bank accounts, right? And we were able to ride on the railroads. Now, what happened next is one another large milestone was what Mannoj also touched upon, which is basically demon, and coupled with QR code, right? So when QR code was, and this is pre-UPI, right? So maybe the wallet era where QR code entered every mom and pop shops, and that led to a kind of awareness, and everybody started accepting digital payments. And the third one, which has really intrigued us also as an organization, is this entire UPI, right? Wherein the way it has led to the convergence of P2P and P2M payments, right? The way I make a payment to my friend is the same way in which I will make a payment to Make My Trip, right? The way I will make a payment in an offline store is again the same way I will do it in an online merchant, right? It is the same NPCI library and the ATM grade PIN. And this convergence has led to digital payment becoming a habit, right? Not many new customers are able to relate to making payments digitally, and that is just leading the kind of growth that we are seeing today. The numbers are, again, off the roof. Nitya.
No, that makes sense. That's fascinating. So, John, coming back to you, when you background, you talked a little bit about consumer itself, the consumer expectation, experience, and at Flipkart, consumers can use so many options, including cash on delivery. Can you give us a sense on literally seeing from the consumer side? Why do consumer does what they do? What have changed over the last, let's say, 5 years, even 10 years? And what are the things that you are seeing in the future from your seat, as in, what are you looking to provide to the consumer? How's that behavior changing based on awareness and penetration of technology? Can you just walk us through the journey with the consumer a little bit?
Sure, Nitya. So let me actually just tell you a fact that cash is still king in India today. Even the last 5 years, we have just made just little bit of progress in terms of our digital to cash percentage, right? Um, India, we are actually going to the real Bharat, the next 100 or 200 million users. For them, again, desktop is not a question. It is like, again, the 5-inch screen that is the shop to them. They just want to come and in one click just check out, and that's something that the ecosystem has to now solve for. How to ensure that payments can be done in a frictionless way, but in a very secure manner. At the same time, if connectivity in tier two, tier three cities, there is a big problem of connectivity. So transaction dot drop, which we call in the payments world success rate. The success rate is actually pretty bad. I think it's the responsibility of the overall to improve the entire technology behind card processing, behind any payments, let it be UPI, let it be net banking, and to make that real time with better success rate. The second factor is consumer trust. They feel that if I actually first see the material and then I can make the payment, I think that's better. While we have still launched multiple options, you have the cost of delivery, but consumers are really ready, and they kind of say that I would rather look into what I'm getting and then pay. And the third big issue is called refunds. So today, if you actually make any digital payment and you want your money back, the first message that pops up is that no, you will get your money within the next 4 to 7 working days. While we have made great strides in terms of instant refund, but we cannot guarantee this to all. So that's the standard message that goes in, that you will get it within 4 to 7 days. And customers really do not trust this, or really do not want to bother themselves to wait for that long, or to actually go to their bank account after 7 days to check if I've got the refund from a agent or not. So these are issues and realistic problems in the Indian market today, and which I think the last 1 year, 18 months has actually been pretty good in terms of new innovation coming in. We have Visa Direct for instant refunds, Mastercard Money Send. We are working on a couple of initiatives where we can actually tell the consumer that if you return a product, we will ensure that you get your money in the next 5 minutes. So yeah, a long way to go, but yes, the journey has started. Over to you. Thank you.
Very interesting. One thing I would just request all panelists is, if you're not talking, let's just put us on mute because there's a little bit of echo. So I don't know who's end. So if you have not spoken. So John, that is a very interesting point you made, and I think just I want to connect two dots here. The point you made and the point Sumit made. Now, the interesting thing about, and then I will bring Mannoj in a second, but the interesting thing about e-commerce is, from a consumer experience point of view, is I'm interacting with somebody online and I'm required to pay now, and then something will come, and then of course refunds and all of that, right? So that's one problem. The second problem is, we sometimes open up our newspaper and we hear about card data breach and this breach. People are worried about that thing, which is why, as Sumit said, when two-factor authentication came, it just seems safer, right? Because at least no one can steal my money from my bank account. But the same two-factor authentication causes that friction, right? The friction of not a one-click checkout, so many passwords, and this password is a bigger problem statement on mobile, right? Because there is a mobile phone and there's only so much screen space you have, and then there's an SMS, sometimes it comes, sometimes it does not come, etc. Right? And John, as you think about it, I just want to double click there. How do you think about that balance, right? On one hand, what Sumit said, that safety is super important, and OTP does make the account safe, right? At the same time, it increases the friction, which leads to drop-offs and success rates, etc., etc. And then there is a natural trust issue in an e-commerce situation, because I will get whatever I'm buying after a day or 2 days or 7 days. And I think this is even more broader than just Flipkart. Of course, Flipkart's and MakemyTrip of the world are some of the best brands in the country, and people trust it. But John, if you can take the view of larger e-commerce, right? Smaller brands also, smaller e-commerce companies, where it's not the Flipkart or Amazon or MakemyTrip, it is relatively new. How do they build trust with their consumer? How do they give the user experience at the same time build the trust?
Sure, Nitya. Very interesting question. The good thing is that the work has started in the ecosystem. It's not that we don't realize that the problem is there and the work is yet to start. So if I look at the larger base of the ecosystem, e-commerce ecosystem, so there are aggregators who really actually come in between and help these e-commerce with their payments, right? So one is definitely to ensure that the customer has trust on it, and obviously that definitely comes with some time and reputation for sure. But in terms of payment trust, so when there are these safety trust markers, right? So definitely, consumers, at least who are seasoned consumers, they understand that as long as these trust markers are there, I know that my payment is secure, right? The second piece is that to do any technology change, you really need bandwidth. And for the larger, broader e-commerce, merchant, I don't think so. They really have that much bandwidth in terms of to have in-house engineering capabilities to modify things, to make things happen, experiment. So that's where these new age aggregators come in place. I know for sure that there are two of them who are really working to actually provide a one-stop, single-click checkout solution. But this definitely will take time. And as you rightly said, that the payment has to be secure. Yes, there are regulations, which has to be honored. For transactions less than 2,000, which contributes to a large portion of transaction, can we actually solve that? Because the regulatory body RBI has already given the permission to accept payments without any 2FA. So that's where your artificial intelligence, the history of the customer, the entire intelligence of the network through which the card process happens, the risk and safety mitigation ways, these all come into place. And this is something that which will take time, Nitya. It's going to take some time, and it's actually more of a learning process. And maybe around another 18 months, we should actually see the ecosystem evolving around this particular piece.
Agreed. Very interesting, John. So Manoj, as you heard here, right? I mean, e-commerce problem statement in e-commerce is obviously slightly different, right? There is a trust issue, there is an internet in the middle, and therefore you need to have all these things so that the consumer, there is a real safety, and then also the consumer feeling safe, super important. Which I assume is less of a problem in the offline use case, because you are there and you are goods at the time of exchange. Can you help us think through? Obviously, the infrastructure work is in progress, and you guys and NPCI, UPI, so many people are building great infrastructure. But of course, eventually the user behavior has to change so that they are scanning the QR code or using a card or whatever. What are the barriers you are seeing in user experience, user behavior shift that you feel are the barriers, and what is the work being done that makes you feel that this will change in the next 18 months or 24 months?
So one important side is, this OTP, what we said, second factor of authentication. So there is one component called, merchant plugin. This is a factor of authentication. So today the MPI version 1.0 is live, but there is a new version which is MPI version 2.1. So Lyra is one of the leading player where we have certified this MPI 2.1. This MPI 2.1 brings a lot of capabilities now, which is more mobile-based capability, more risk-based functions you can do. more features are there. Recurring payments can come in. So this MPI 2.1, which will get implemented here in India in another 6 months' time, both issuer and acquirer would be ready on this particular front. One, the entire ecosystem is ready. Then we would see that, this friction that we are saying, and the experience will improve, and also a lot of risk modeling will also happen with this MPI 2.1. So Lyra is closely working with all the large players on this front. We are an expert on this particular topic. So this will again improve the transaction and the customer experience and the trust with the customer. One more important observation, that I share here, the merchant, this is what we have done. So merchant has started taking more transactions with UPI because he's getting money immediately. So this was one very important component. On the merchant side, it is always T+1 settlement is there, right? As soon as we said, boss, immediate settlement we will give you with UPI. Immediately you get the message that fund has come. So merchant is very happy with this, especially the smaller merchants where he's trying to do digital payment first time. He's very happy to use it. And now a lot of aggregators, as John has mentioned, a lot of aggregators are also playing a critical role to enable these smaller merchants. And these aggregators are also, responsible, to control, the fraudulent merchant, to control the payment cycle, to give the timely payment. So they are also playing a very responsible role. And, because of this, a lot of smaller merchants are also coming on the ecosystem. So these 2-3 components are playing very critical role to enable the smaller and the new merchants, especially on the e-com side.
Got it. Yeah, totally makes sense. And Sumit, just bringing back that question that I asked John. So you obviously mentioned, in 2007 and 2000, in a few years back, OTP was a very important step that needed to be taken for consumers to feel safe about the online environment, putting their card online, right? At the same time, it brings that friction. One of the, I think I would say, one of the things that is more different in MakemyTrip or general purpose travel is your ticket sizes are probably higher than average e-commerce. And therefore, this 2000 thing, right? So how do you see it? So, my question to you is, how do you see that tension between that security, actual security, which could be done through OTP or machine learning or all sorts of artificial intelligence and data? Of course, the perception of security for the consumer, so that the consumer is feeling safe also. And then, of course, the regulatory environment, which has the, which are obviously important. How do you and MakemyTrip balance that tension there? And I would love to also, and I'm sure our audience would love to learn a little bit about Trip Money, which you are running. What is the vision of Trip Money, and what are the things, that innovations that you are doing for the consumer? That'll be great to understand.
Surely, Nitya. See, this entire tension between the fact that it has to be secure and the fact that it has to be convenient and simple, right, is what we live with on a day-to-day basis. So fully agree with you. It is important to balance the two. I think what has happened over the period is that we have started believing that payment is a very connected event to the transaction, right? And it is important to basically maybe it has to be a disjointed event, right? When you pay in an offline world, you can pay to the shopkeeper if you want at that point in time, or you have an ability, the shopkeeper will trust you. You can just walk out. You can make the payment later, right? Or maybe you can even make it over the period of time in multiple tranches, right? The same behavior has to translate in the online world, is what we're investing behind, wherein maybe we authenticate the user, right? So today what happens, if somebody has to make a payment on MakemyTrip or GoIbibo, the payment authorization and authentication happens together, right? We are working towards making the authentication and the authorization like as two different disjointed events, right? Authenticate the user before the payment, before the transaction, and at the time of the transaction, all you need to do is to authorize, right? That's one part to it. That also takes me to your other question, Nitya, about Trip Money. See, as an organization, we consider payments and fintech very, very seriously, and we're investing behind it. So much so that we have created Trip Money as a different unit, right, with its own arms and legs. And what Triple is trying to do today is to basically work on innovative credit solutions, right? We very, very firmly believe that the next wave of growth will come from affordability. This entire credit to household income ratio in India is so low. It is like in the early 20s, as compared to maybe China, where it will be in the range of 60%, right? Your debt that you take as against your income is as high as 60%, as compared to some of the advanced economies where it is maybe 100 or even 100 plus, yeah, for all you know, right? Uh, and hence, Triple's focus is to work on multiple fintech solutions as well as credit giving to the consumer so that they can make the entire transaction affordable and then pay over the period of time in EMIs. So that's what we are trying to do.
Got it. And I think the point you made is very important. I think when you think about what happens when somebody makes payment, there's authentication, and there is settlement. And if someone were to take a risk-based approach of segmenting these couple of things in 2 or 3 chunks, there is obviously a settlement risk. But perhaps with today's technology and data science, that and of course deep profiles that merchants, especially online merchants, can have about the consumer, that risk can be greatly reduced, and of course we use that to provide both affordability and great user experience to the consumer. So that's a great point, Sumit, and good luck with Trip Money. It sounds like a great initiative. This is a fascinating conversation. So I have a couple of questions here, and again, audience, if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to put it on the chat. And if you want it to be addressed to a particular panelist, you can write that name also. But we have the first question now. The question is, what service aspects of digital payments are most valuable to merchants? And I think the question is about if there is an aggregator or a payment infrastructure, whether online or offline, and they come to like a e-commerce company like a Flipkart or MakemyTrip, what are the most valuable services that somebody can provide? John, if you can help us answer that question.
Sure, Nitya. So I would actually, take it in, or rather break it in 2 pieces. One would be for large merchants like us, wherein scale success rates would be the predominant 2 factors which I would look at. And when we actually go to the broader base of merchants, they would actually look at maybe the MDR or the rates which the payment aggregators charge them, because it is very important for them to even manage economics. And the second factor would be that how many payment instruments can we just come and plug it in, because they may not have the bandwidth to come and integrate each and every payment method. Maybe a phone pay, a GPay, a Paytm, credit debit cards. So can that aggregator actually come and just give a one-stop solution for all payment instruments?
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. We have a second question, and the question is, what are the issues in onboarding and retention of merchants from tier cities vis-a-vis tier 1 cities? And Mannoj, I think you're probably the best person to answer this question. What is the difference between onboarding and the usage and retention of a merchant from a big city like Mumbai or Bangalore versus a tier 3 or even a tier 4 city?
Yeah, Nitya. So basically what happens with tier 1, mostly people are educated and, they practice digital payments already, So, enabling them is easier, explaining them it's easier to them. And in fact, when we ask for KYC and other documentation, they are very open and, they will immediately share. So, so this is very easy with, the metros, big cities. But when you go to the smaller cities, mostly, these guys are first time users and they even don't use internet banking, and it is very new to them. So explaining them, making them understand, creating a relationship with them, asking for documentation, doing a KYC, so this is the difference. But then we have to explain. But now people are ready. They understand the importance of digital payment. They have seen, how, without digital payment, things will stop. So they are open now, and we are able to convince them to share their KYC documents, enable them, and give them a training, and how things will work. And mostly then payment is another angle where they want so they're more concerned about payment because a lot of companies are from Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, and they go and do a servicing there. So they don't know these companies. These are new companies. Trust is not there. So we have to somehow create a trust wherein we say, the boss, we will give you a payment. So they're mostly worried about their payment and whether they will get a payment or not. So once we say that, boss, you will get your payment within 1 hour or immediately, then they're mostly convinced and they're okay to accept. They just don't, because they don't understand email. They just don't want to contact the service provider for payment. Do a call, so to send an email, because they don't understand. They don't have time to write a lot of emails and do a lot of calls to the call center. So these are the problems. They just want their money immediately. So they're okay if you give them their money immediately. They're okay to accept a digital payment. This is what we have seen.
I know that makes sense, and that's the cool thing about cash, right? Cash hits your hand, and there's no issue with cash.
Right.
The fourth question that we have is a really interesting question, and I think we tried to touch on it, but probably, I think this is a very interesting question, and I think it's for Sumit. Sumit, I would love for you to maybe take a stab at it. The question is, various payment-related frauds are increasing, right? Which also dents trust. At the same time, we are trying to balance simplicity. We are trying to make simple things easier and one click, and what you also mentioned, you also want to give affordability, etc. The more you distance yourself from real time authentication and settlement, which is where the friction and all the complications come, and you separate the two, basically fraud happens, risk happens, etc. Not only that impacts unit economics, business, but I think the question is, it also erodes consumers' trust, right? So do you want to talk to us about, I'm sure in your product meetings, you must be having this discussion all the time. How do you think about that, right? How do you take that measured approach and that play the fine dance around, giving that experience at the same time, making sure that trust is not dented vis-a-vis the consumer?
Sure, Nitya. I mean, again, a really interesting question, right? And we deal with it on a daily basis. I will briefly try to answer it in a manner that I think it is time that we move the trust one level below, right? So the trust for the digital payment ecosystem is all great. To a large extent, maybe it is set, right? It is time to move that trust to the merchant level, right? Or maybe even to a participant level. So if I talk of a large merchant, maybe they can work on it on its own. Maybe the smaller ones would love to have participants or aggregators in between who can solve it for them, right? And what I mean by moving the trust one level down is, if you see what is happening in at least Americas, right? Unlike India, where there is only one body who is bothered, one regulator who is bothered about the risk aspect, right? In USA, there are two regulators, right? There is one who takes care of the risk and the other who takes care of simplicity. And both of them will have to, and that is why that country has never mandated 2FA, right? Because the one body has to satisfy the other one. But what it has also led is to basically move the trust to one level below. Customers trust making payment to Amazon over there. Customer trust PayPal. And that is because they bring that, whether it is a liability cover on the top or the kind of tech that they have built up, that the fraud in their platform is very, very minimal, right? So that is one thing which every participant should invest behind and should just help in bridging the gap here.
Makes sense. I think we have time for just one more question, and we have a lot of questions. So apologies that if we are not able to address every single question. And Shivani, let me know if we have maybe 5 more minutes so that I can take a couple of more questions. But the next question is, which other products and services can be offered to merchants in addition to payments that can be value addition to their businesses? And perhaps, John, you probably are a good place to answer that question. And maybe you can, take a perspective. Of course, you know the most about Flipkart Group, but as a stepping back a little bit and thinking about the larger market, not Flipkart, because obviously Flipkart has a lot of resources, and you guys can have hundreds and hundreds of developers solving critical problems. But a slightly smaller, 1 or 2 level down e-commerce retailer. What are the other things that aggregators and payment companies can do to add value there besides giving all the payment options?
So Nitya, as you rightly mentioned, that it has to be a plug-and-play solution. So if you see that a couple of years ago there was this smart aggregator who came in and said that no, hey, I'm there to enable digital payments for you, and guess what? I'll enable it in 4 hours, right? So a small, very small merchant, maybe like operating from a house, they would love this. Maybe someone who actually gives one-on-one coaching classes, right? They really cannot afford to actually pay that sum of money, or maybe keep someone even, or maybe he's the sole owner, right? Maybe a proprietorship firm. So this particular feature, that plug and play, you give me control, I'll fix it within 4 hours, and you're good to go to accept digital payments. So yeah, so definitely give all affordability options, give all payment instruments, and then plug and play. So I would say that that would be the most important factor.
Yeah, no, John, that's great advice, and I completely agree with you. And for the audience, I think the entire panel here are people who have seen a lot, right? So I think anything they are saying right now is definitely super critical. So hopefully this is good advice as well. I think we have maybe Shivani, do we have a time for one last question, or should we wrap up?
That's it. We are done with the questions, Mr. Sharma.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. So thank you very much for taking the time. John, Sumit, Mannoj, really appreciate your time and the perspective. This was fascinating. I learned a lot today, and I'm sure the audience today learned a lot. And thank you, Lyra, for giving us all an opportunity to talk about a very important topic in Indian commerce, and
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Thank you to all our speakers for making this discussion so engaging. Special thanks to our audience and our sponsor. Another thanks to our title partner, Lyra, powered by partner PhonePe, agenda partner PayPoint, payment partner PayU, and our gold partner Visa, Freshworks, and AWS. Thank you, everyone. Please stay tuned for other interesting sessions.
Thank you very much.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.